Since solo leveling is finally hitting the mainstream, I wanted to give everyone an easy way to understand just how cool, insanely broke, and ludicrously OP the Shadow Army is. As such, I created this diagram to explain everything about them as best as possible, especially the power levels for each rank. Because if you have read the manhwa or web novel too, you can attest to the absolute insanity it is to understand the power scaling. Especially for part 2, cause it yielded any attempt to create a power rank system. Also, fair spoiler warning, I will cover stuff post season 2 of the anime. At the bottom of the army are all kinds of monsters ranging from C to A rank, with them either having the title of Standard, Elite or Knight. Although they are the weakest shadows, they are still far more powerful than an opponent of the same rank. That is due to their ethereal bodies, allowing them to regenerate with the mana of the Shadow Monarch, meaning that it doesn't matter what kind of injuries they sustain. And with Monarch's domain, increasing a shadow stats by 50%, the overall power level goes up by one entire rank. Plus, with their vast numbers, they can outnumber any opponent and attack them from multiple directions at once. And as for the weakness, well, they don't have any. They will fight for all eternity unless they have no mana anymore to respawn. Which isn't a problem for them when Sun Qingwu officially became the second Shadow Monarch, giving him access to an infinite supply of mana. As for what kind of beast can be found here, well, in the original timeline, Jinwu has normal knights, high orcs, ice bears, ants, nagas, and mages filling these ranks. But after traveling back in time, defeating every monarch, including all of their subordinates, it would be easier to list all the magic beasts he doesn't have in his ranks. Demons. So yeah, at the end of the story, Sun Qingwu has approximately 10 million shadows under his command. A giant, unstoppable army functioning also as a highly effective information network, depending on how Sun is utilizing them. With the majority of his shadows being somewhere between the Standard and Knight rank, the only real weakness these ranks have is a lack of intelligence, personality, and, to some extent, the free will of the higher ranked shadows. You see, upon a successful extraction, a shadow's power is solely based on the amount of mana they possessed when they were still alive. It is the sole criteria which dictates the rank of a shadow soldier. As such, every creature between the Standard, Elite or Knight rank was weak when they were still alive, making them in turn just forgettable foot soldiers, since they lack any distinct characteristics as well as the immense power of the higher ranks. Now, it is important to mention that actually the Knight rank is the base level for any shadow to get a name and begin to display a very basic personality. However, as the story progresses, those of the Knight rank simply blend into the rest of the bottom tier soldiers. They have no significance to the story, and ending with tank, only a total of 3 shadows of the Knight rank got a name. So yeah, the Knight rank is essentially the most powerful one of the lower tiers, but doesn't get much attention from Sun. In contrast to the Knights, however, are the Elite Knights, who actually stay relevant for almost the entire story. They are the natural upgrade path from the Knight rank with a more refined and intelligent personality. They are even able of making their own basic decisions with the intent to best serve their league, making it mandatory for them to have a name, while it is more optional for a knight to receive a name. And although they are eligible for a name, it doesn't mean that Sun actually gives them one. As you know, he is extremely bad with names. The most relatable thing for me about him. After obtaining Ashbourne's part of the Shadow Army, I'm sure he wasn't in the mood to come up with names for 100,000 new shadows. These additions consist of soldiers from the rulers, which I'm referring to as Silver Angels, and 3 dragons approximately on the same power level as Kamish. Now, neither the web novel nor the manhwa bothered to give a concrete answer as to the power level. The only indicator is that every hunter present when Ashburn's army arrived thought that the world would end when they saw those 3 dragons. After all, it took only one dragon, Kamish, to destroy the entire US West Coast. And to kill that dragon, it required several dozens S-rank hunters, of which only a total of 5 survived and, as reward, received the national rank. Hence, I would wager that all of these silver angels and dragons are around the S rank, which is the base level of the elite knights. In fact, the elite knight rank is the Shadow Army's pool of shadows with powers equal to human S rank hunters. However, the hunter S rank is its own power pool, where you throw into any entity whose mana power cannot be measured with human tools. Even the national level hunters technically belong into the S rank, but they are far more stronger than most S ranks. In fact, having an S rank rating and completing one S rank dungeon are the prerequisites to receive a national rank rating, marking any person with the title as the strongest mankind has to offer. As a result, there's also quite a power discrepancy amidst the elite knights, just like with S rank hunters. And if I was the creator, I too couldn't be bothered to tier the S ranks into a 10-to-1 class system. Now, the longest serving elite knight of the Shadow Army, just before the time reversal, was Iwan. I'm saying was because after Sang Jin-woo asked the rulers to turn back time with the Cup of Reincarnation, he lost Iwan since his former human self was restored with its use. Throughout the story, Iwan had the role of a tank. He aggroed enemies to draw in their attacks, while his teammates attacked the distracted enemies, with the best way to describe his personality being that of a dense, moronic klutz who's having a bit too much pride. He essentially retained some of his human characteristics when he was still a human A-rank hunter associated with the White Tiger Guild. However, when he met Sang during the Red Gate incident, this personality was the cause for his fate to drastically change. His psyche couldn't handle the harsh conditions of the snowy fields, of how his comrades were killed one after another by the Ice Elves. With him being the sole survivor of his squad and also half-starved, these extreme conditions pushed him over the brink of madness. Viewing not the Ice Elves as the cause for his miserable state, but Sang instead. Sang triggered his inferiority complex, which combined with his madness, pushed him to kill Sang, only to find Igris to kill him first and get extracted as Sang's second special shadow in the story to fight Beru. Killed in a quick and unspectacular way is also what happened to the Wyvern of the demon monarch Bellion. He was cut down in one lethal strike by Sang and his forces when they fought against Bellion atop the demon castle dungeon. Coincidentally, during this entire conquest, this was the only shadow Sang extracted due to the soul of demons being too corrupted for shadow extraction. However, Sang doesn't utilize Kazel much later on in the story, only if he needs a fast taxi to go from A to B together with someone else, turning it practically into a "I'm your two money, please use me anyway" shadow. And in the same boat is also Jima, who gets forgotten as well. It is the shadow of the A-Gate boss monster who Sang defeated in a single strike during the very first raid of his Arching guild. Jima, or whether all Naga monsters, can grow drastically in size by utilizing their mana, giving Jima the equal size of a giant during Japan's Red Gate dungeon break incident, trading blows with them on equal size, during which Sang went onto a shopping spree for Shadow Giants, beings that level Tokyo and large portions of Japan effortlessly by just walking all over Japan. And naturally, at this point, they were nothing to Sang. So much so that he even didn't bother to come up with names for them when he extracted them, giving them the glorious names of Giant number 1 to 28. Understandable. Everyone forgot they existed anyway. Why bother giving them proper names then? It's not like they are capable of proper communication. Unlike the next rank within the Shadow Army, who actually can speak. Which is an absolute necessity as those generals are in charge of several battalions of the Shadow Army, relaying orders from Sang to the rest of his soldiers, as well as making proper decisions on the fly to best serve their league's interest, is essentially a must for any good commander. As for the power level, well, they are the pinnacle of the S-rank. Entities so strong that they could survive and clear an S-rank gate all alone, which puts them on the same level as national rank, whose powers are the equivalent of an entire nation's military, including nukes. But don't worry, we haven't even gotten to the most OP parts of the Shadow Army yet. The only 3 shadows holding this position being Greed, Kamish and Tusk, with Tusk being one of the longest serving special shadows within Sang's army, which is especially true for his mage and shamanistic abilities that make him stand out even more from all the other named shadows. You see, Tusk has any magic attack and buff spell imaginable, allowing him to enhance and grow his body to beat an opponent to death or fry them with his Dragon Breath attack. And if this isn't enough, he has access to all kinds of hexes that put insta-kill or major debuffs onto his enemies. And if this list of magic isn't broke enough already, with the Orb of Avarice, all of his abilities become twice as effective. To describe Tusk as nothing less than a calamity would truly be insulting, because every shadow of the general rank is considered to be a calamity to the human race's existence. Which is why after Sang's 27-year-long war against the Monarchs in the reverse timeline, the dragon Kamish likely became one of his shadow soldiers permanently. A shadow Sang extracted in the original timeline long after its death, but wasn't able to make a permanent part of his army, which if successful would have made Kamish the second shadow to achieve the general rank back then. However, with the war against the Monarchs concluded and having around 10 million shadows at his command, Kamish very likely became a permanent part of Sang's army now, since not a single magic beast ever reached Earth. In exchange, Shinwu had to give up Greed though, as just like with Iron, he too was reincarnated as his former human self in the new timeline. Which probably isn't too hard for Sang, considering that he didn't like his former human self to begin with. However, 2 shadows Sang couldn't live without are the ones bearing the title of Marshal. Arguably his coolest shadows being Igris and Beru, whose powers are even greater than of the general ranked shadows, which promoted them to the higher rank. And they are no joke because there's no proper way to quantify their power level other than that they can easily trade blows with monarchs on equal footing. Some of the most powerful beings in the entire series who can be kept in check by 2 of Sang's most powerful shadows. Something that is best exemplified during the fight between Igris and the Monarch of Frost, who recognized Igris as the Blood Red commander from his Ashbourne days and noted that he is a serious threat even to a monarch such as himself. Other than being a serious and well-feared threat on the battlefield, he is also the very first special soldier Sang extracted right after completing his job change quest. Igris is the perfect embodiment of what a chivalrous knight ought to be. Something that was best exemplified with his conduct during his fight with Sang and also later on throughout the entire series. He is also noted to be highly smart and in charge of teaching other shadows, giving them a proper education in the art of war to better serve Sang and refine their techniques to make them even more lethal. It is as such no exaggeration that Igris is the perfect embodiment of what a loyal servant ought to be. Beru, on the other hand, is contrasting Igris' attitude in every possible aspect. To summarize his entire personality in one statement, he's best boy insect doggo. Right before the final Jeju Island raid, he was born by the Ant Queen to become the king of their ant colony and lead them into prosperity, a being bred to be superior in every aspect. A monster already back then able to slay S-rank hunters, even as powerful as Goto Ryoji, putting him already back then on the national rank in terms of power. And although his speed, strength, intelligence, and ruthlessness alone make it obvious as to why he is on such a power level, this isn't his final form. It doesn't even exist, literally. You see, his most terrifying ability is that he can gain the knowledge, memories, and abilities from other beings he consumed. Something he retained even as a shadow soldier. To put it into perspective just how OP Beru is, this alone would in theory allow him to acquire every possible skill. Meaning that he could become infinitely strong with the only real cap to his powers being if he has a skill already or not. As such, he truly is the ultimate weapon the Ant Queen wanted. However, he got aura farmed so hard by Sung that instead of a king, he became Sung's loyal pet instead. Who is definitely the most hilarious of all the shadow soldiers. And if you dislike him, go fuck yourself. Hey yo, no one disrespects our best boy Beru. I mean bro, we are talking about a being that can, even in his shadow form, continue to become infinitely stronger, but instead decides to simp hard for his master. To some never seen before, truly impressive simp levels. While guarding his king's sister, Beru discovered a disease known as K-dramas. And he got hooked so hard on them that he uses especially the historical ones as learning material for more absurd phrases and mannerisms to display in front of his master. Bruh, Beru is probably the most powerful comedic relief character in all of fiction. Which is also why he can never become the second in command of the entire Shadow Army. No, the position of the Grand Marshal is only reserved for the most powerful Shadow Soldier. An entity close in powers to the Shadow Monarch himself. With the only Shadow to ever hold this rank being Bellion. A being born eons ago from the fruits of the World Tree, a tree akin to Yggdrasil itself. When he was still a ruler, he became Ashbourne's lieutenant. A position that he retained even after his death due to becoming the very first Shadow Soldier born from Ashbourne's newly discovered powers over death. As for Bellion's power level, well, he could defeat Beru, a Shadow with his rank's power ranking rivaling that of a Monarch, effortlessly in single combat. His strength is best explained by his enormous reserves of mana as well as the versatility of his attack options. He can throw punches ripping through an enemy's armor while also carrying a giant sword that can transform mid-fight into a whip for mid to long-range attacks. Combined with his immense strength, his sword strikes can slice through enemies like a knife through butter. So, Bellion can pretty much handle any combat scenario. And I wouldn't be surprised if he could stand his ground against Antares, the most powerful monarch, in a one-on-one fight. And if the most powerful Shadow Soldier's powers can even dwarf a monarch, then get ready to hear about the absurdity of aura farmer Sang Jinwoo's powers. You wanna know why we meme about him aura farming everything? I'm gonna read a section from the web novel that explains it. This is around when Sang officially became the second Shadow Monarch and discovered the full extent of his newfound powers. One such difficulty was the store. Jinwoo summoned out a bottle of healing potion originally stored in his inventory and stared at it as if to bore a hole through the damn thing. As it turned out, every item found in the store had been created out of the Shadow Sovereign's powers. It was basically magic where one would create something with mana. So, the theory went that, since he had inherited the Shadow Sovereign's powers, Jinwoo should be able to create the same types of items as long as he willed it, but he quietly closed his eyes and began picturing the healing potion inside his head. When he did, he could pick up the movement of mana. Concentrate, concentrate, he thought. Unfortunately, mana busily moving around failed to gather and codulate before scattering away in the air. It was a failure. Shinru spat out aside and opened his eyes again. It seemed that the threshold of creating something out of magic was still out of reach for him. For now. I guess I need to practice for a bit longer, he thought. So yeah, he can create anything out of mana so long as he wills it. That is the reason why we all simp for his aura. And adding to his busted power level is also the world of eternal slumber. The Shadow Monarch's domain, which Song can alter and bend to his will. Yes, Bro's aura is legit so strong that he can bend reality with it. That's the absurd level of power we're talking about here. And I'm not even over-choking anymore. I mean, even if we ignore this and his army's fighting prowess, Sung as a Shadow Monarch is a being residing outside of the cycle of life and death. Which isn't normal immortality, mind you. He cannot be destroyed even by flames capable of erasing someone from existence. Leaving him only with a couple of scars he could never fully heal. This guy is so busted that I don't even have to talk about his fighting prowess, since you probably get the idea that there's no one stronger than him. I mean, fuck, this guy can probably solo Goku and Saitama combined. That is how ludicrously strong he is. With the only possible thing left to fight for him being outer gods from other dimensions in the soul-leveling Ragnarok sequel. So, apologies if I'm not going into every little detail of his capabilities, but this video's sole focus is to highlight the absurd power scales of the entire Shadow Army, which ends with Sung as the pinnacle of this absolute busted army. Now, this would be the end of this video, but I gotta talk with you for a bit. Those actually sticking around for the entire video. About shit happening to me, to be precise. So, at the new job I started recently, my only other colleague suddenly decided to quit. Happy surprise for me with a lot of shit dropping onto me. Spent the last 3 weeks just transferring all of his 7 years of knowledge into the knowledge base I still have to build up from the ground. Next to taking over all of his tasks on top of mine. So yeah, shit hit the fan hard for me. For context, I became a fucking CTO, CIO, IT project manager with first, second and third level support in less than 2 months starting there. Man, I'm so fucking gifted. Meaning that I had to bust my ass off just for that alone this last month to not get as hard fucked as I am already. This shit show forced me to take a break between editing this video and now finally publishing it. And in a twisted way of luck, it gave me a new fresh pair of eyes. I only now notice how bad it is in some writing and voiceover parts. Honestly, I couldn't be bothered to change it without redoing a lot of work and waste 2 more months to get it done. Which is why it is still a bit rough. It is watchable and not a train wreck, but I don't like it. It isn't what I imagined it to be, and definitely not how I want my videos to be in the future. Which is why I'm going to change stuff up around the writing and voiceover parts. To improve the overall quality, but this will take me from now on even longer to finish a video. So heads up guys, I'm gonna upload extremely random, since I'm strained for free time and mostly energy due to my current job situation. So subscribe if you want to see if I can actually do better videos. And please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments if I'm overthinking things or if you agree with my assessment. And until the next one, boys. See ya!